Okay. So today's title is there a commandment to conquer the land of Israel? You got it right now? Hope I have it right now. Why is that an important topic nowadays? Especially Torah, Mitzvah, and Kolel?
What's the question?
Is there a commandment? Oh, what's the question? Okay. The question is how we read Sefer Bamidbar. Now, there's no doubt in Sefer Bamidbar there's a commandment to conquer Israel. Now, what does that have to do with this week's parsha? Anyone know? What?
The borders.
Oh, so we have the borders, but open up Perek, actually Parshat Maseh. Open up Perek Lamed Gimel. Look at Perek Lamed Gimel, Parshat Maseh. Let's just begin with the main source, and then we'll get to work. Give a couple of minutes for people to arrive. Okay. If you just came, take the source sheet. We didn't start yet, really. And make sure you have a Chumash or Tanakh. Our Chumash is enough for today. Okay. Just to show our Parshat Maseh begins with a list of all the different travels. Sort of seems like a summary of everything we've been, not just in Sefer Bamidbar, also in Sefer Shemot. But it's a nice travel of all the Masorot. And then when it's over, look at the end of the list in Pasuk Memtet. Vayachanua al yadei mibeit leishimot ad Evel Hashitim barvot Moav. Okay. After all the traveling, where do we end up? In Evel Hashitim in Avot Moav. If you remember Sefer Yoshua, remember Perek Bet, where does Yoshua send the Maglim from? You might remember Vayshach Yoshua Maglim min Hashitim. That's the area where they're encamped in Ever Yarden. Basically, this is the end of Moshe's career. He brings them to Ever Yarden and Evel Hashitim, and then and we're ready to move on. But it's time for Moshe to die, and then we'll continue. Now, Pasuk Nun, have it? Now we're starting this year. Pasuk Nun, but in Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Nun. Vaydaber Shem Moshe barvot Moav al yidei Yericho lemor. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amarta lehem ki atem ovrim et Yarden el Eretz Canaan, means when you cross the Jordan coming up to go to Eretz Canaan. Vorashtem et kol yoshvei haaretz mipnechem v'ibaratem et kol maskiotam v'kol tzamei masechtom ta'bedu v'kol babatom tashmidu. Now, does that sound like a commandment? Vorashtem et kol yoshvei haaretz?
Yeah.
Okay. But it sounds like one. But what else continues? When you conquer the land, what do you need to do? V'ibaratem et, you have to get rid of all the idol worship. What's the logic of that? What tends to happen if you conquer a land and there's idols there? People come, hey, what's going on here? Check it out. And then lead us astray. Okay? Now, the next line is the big one. Pasuk Nun Gimel. Vorashtem et haaretz v'shaptem ba. You understand why that seems to be a little superfluous? Yes. So we just said V'horashtem Nun Bet. But Nun Bet is primarily, as you conquer it, get rid of the idol worship. Now there's another pasuk. Vorashtem et haaretz v'shaptem ba. Because when you conquer the land, also settle it. Because I'm the one giving you the land to conquer. And then after you conquer the land and you want to give it out, how do you parcelize the land? Okay, based on the families. If you're a rabbi, you get a big portion. What's wrong with that? There's a law. They're passing a law like that soon. Okay. If you're a rabbi, you get a bigger portion because of the importance of Torah study. Okay. Ulamat, those who study less Torah, I'm just kidding, in case you're listening on the tape. Okay. Now, basically, when you parcelize the land, do it fairly based on on relative population. Yeah.
Horashtem, exact meaning, because Horashtem et kol yoshvei implies kick them out and take their place. The Horashtem et haaretz seems to imply doing inherit the land. I mean, in the end, it's probably...
We're going to talk about that soon, but the idea is, what's the main mitzvah? Is the main mitzvah getting rid of idol worship, getting rid of the people in the land, or getting rid of, or settling the land? We'll keep that in mind.
Thinking about the tense, the Horash tent, it sounds like avar. It sounds like past tense.
Yeah, but there's a vav in front, so that always puts it around. It's called vav haipuch.
So,
okay.
Can I make a grammatical
sure.
to your question?
Yeah.
If you look where the tam, where the trup is, the trup is on the tem. And so it's not the harashtem, because that's in the past you inherited it or you possessed it. The harashtem is futuristic command. So you have to be very careful how you pronounce it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's the
The
harashtem.
same thing. Yeah. Also, the V'shamru b'nei Yisrael to Shabbat. It's not a story, but rather it's a commandment. Remember saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You loved God in the past.
But it's something you have to do. Okay, good point. Okay. V'im lo tarishu et yoshvei haaretz. And now we have some advice, which maybe is applicable today. If you don't do the job, if you don't kick them out, they'll kick you out. That's almost more than prophecy. Okay. And there'll be and whatever I wanted to do to them, they're going to do to you, and that's how we end. Now, it sounds like a done deal that there's a commandment to conquer the land. Agreed? Now, from what you remember from your Zionist education, does any rabbi actually hold that this is a commandment, a biblical commandment to conquer the land forever? That's a famous Ramban that everyone in our education loves to quote. Other than Ramban, anyone else agree with him?
Rabbi Kahana.
Okay. so the goal of today's shir is to understand what's the logic of the machloket and what's behind it. Okay, that's the whole goal of the shir, not to take sides, but rather simply from the point of view of Chumash. Now, in our tradition, where we received the Torah at Har Sinai, where are the mitzvot that Am Yisrael needs to keep forever given? Where's the main place where God gives the instruction, the Torah, to the Jewish people? Har Sinai. You were all there, thematically. Agreed? Mm-hmm. And God had a whole year to teach us mitzvot. We arrive at Har Sinai, remember? We enter a covenant to be His people. We get the 10 statements. We get Parshat Mishpatim. We get the laws of Sefer Devarim, according to Moshe Rabbeinu. We get basically laws of Parshat Bahar B'chukotai. Then we have the second luchot, maybe get to the laws of the Mishkan, depending what order it's in. We build the Mishkan, we get some more mitzvot after we build the Mishkan, how to use the Mishkan in Sefer Vayikra. But basically, by the time we leave Har Sinai, and Parshat Balotcha, remember by Yivin Saron, by then we should have received everything we need to do. Now, I want to take a look now at a very interesting line. I want to jump now to the end of the book. Okay, let's look at the end of the book itself, the very last line. You don't have to stand up, but the end of the book. Here, take a. We ran out. If you have an extra source sheet, we need one or two more. The very last line is said for Bamidbar. Listen to the wording, okay? It's a classic summary verse, isn't it? Perek Lamed Vav, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Okay? Ela hamitzvot b'mishpatim. Okay? This is summarizing. These are the commandments and the judgments of the laws. Asher tziva Hashem biyad Moshe el bnei Yisrael barvot Moab al yadei Yericho. Nice and simple. These are the commandments, mitzvot and mishpatim, which God commanded through the hand of Moshe to bnei Yisrael in Arvot Moab, opposite Yericho. Nice and simple. Is that summarizing the entire book? Yes or no?
Yeah. No. Just the ones that are given.
No, why can't it be summarizing the entire book? Because it's summarizing a very specific set of mitzvot that were given when? In Arvot Moab, as opposed to, I'll give you another example. Go back a book. Look at the very last line of Sefer Vayikra, which is almost super similar, but a very important difference. The last line of Sefer Vayikra, I have to tell you what Perek and Pasuk because it's the last line. But in case you want to put it onto your computer, it's going to be chapter 26, the last line. No, 27, verse 34. Okay. Ela hamitzvot asher tziva Hashem et Moshe el bnei Yisrael b'Har Sinai. Now, what's that summarizing? That's interesting. But just go back to the end of Perek Chavav, which is even a better line. Okay. The last line of Perek Chavav. Ela chukim v'mishpatim ha'torot asher natan Hashem beino ben bnei Yisrael b'Har Sinai b'yad Moshe. Why two summary psukim at the end of Vayikra? That's a class in Sefer Vayikra. But when we're summarizing laws, what's being emphasized? These are laws that God gave Moshe to teach Bnei Israel. Where? In Har Sinai. Make sense? That's where the laws are supposed to be given from. Either on Har Sinai or at Har Sinai when they build the Mishkan. That's it. And therefore, remember Torah Tziv Eloheinu Moshe, and it's called Torah Misinai? Most of the laws were given on Har Sinai. If there are laws that are given later on, that's the question. Sometimes we have laws which are called mitzvot l'dorot, and there's mitzvot l'sha'ah. Give me an example of a mitzvah l'sha'ah. a mitzvah that was only for the generation in the desert? Give me an example of a mitzvah l'sha'ah. So the Mishkan, that's a great question, whether that was the Sha'ar of the Dorot. Mana would be on the Sha'ah for sure. Fighting Midyan would be a commandment just for that generation. Who's going to be in charge of dividing up the land? Which people? Like, remember what I want to show you, we're going to find a whole set of mitzvot which are specific for that generation, which makes sense, because that generation has to conquer the land for the first time. The question is, are the laws in Sefer Bamidbar, we'll see, that don't belong in Vayikra, we've talked about that before, but I'll review that in a minute, are they just for that generation, or are they for all generations? Got my point? Now, what I'm pointing out is that if there's a set of mitzvot that are given specifically in Avot Moav, it could be they're only for the first generation, and I want to use that to explain why the commentators argue what's the status of these mitzvot that are given in Avot Moav. Make sense now? Now. Yeah, that's right. Unless you want to pass a new law, that'll make it right. I got to cut my jokes today. Now, back to our topic. So let's take a look now for a minute. Where does this section begin? Where do we find other laws that are given in Avot Moav? Where do we have the introduction? Remember, at the end of Sefer Bamidbar, look again at that line. The end of Perek Lamed Vav in Sefer Bamidbar. Ela mitzvot v'mishpatim asher tziva Hashem biyad Moshe el bnei Yisrael b'Avot Moav. I want to find out where they begin. Now, there's a little change here in the wording, which is unique to this line. Usually it says, these are the mitzvot that God gave Moshe to teach bnei Yisrael. What's different here? It says biyad Moshe. Now, these mitzvot that we're taught about conquering the land, for example, who's going to fulfill them? Yeshua. Who should God be commanding them to? To Yeshua. He's going to do it. Instead, what does God do? God gives the mitzvot biyad Moshe, got it, to teach bnei Yisrael, even though what? Even though he's not going to fulfill them. Now, just think, maybe thematically, or maybe just as far as good feeling. Isn't it sad that Moshe can't get the job done that he was given to do? So even though he's not going to be there for the conquest, remember, God doesn't even let him go in as Rabbi Emeritus in Parshat Betchanan. Can't even see the land. But isn't it nice that Moshe gets to be the one that's going to command the laws that he himself won't be able to fulfill? That topic will come up again later at the end of Sefer Devarim as well.
By giving it to Moshe, it indicates that it's for all generations.
That could be, or it could be, it's just a nice way of saying goodbye, giving Moshe the job to command them, even though, again, I could consider that as well. Depends if I'm a Zionist or I'm just joking again. Okay. Okay. Now,
it could be that once certain laws are given and they're fulfilled,
they're over. Okay.
They're not necessary.
Okay, we're gonna continue in a minute.
First time, you won't have to.
Okay. So let's take a look now. Go back to Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Nun where we started. Now we can start to share again, and look at the opening line, which is almost a giveaway. We have a summary in Parshat Masei of all the Mas'ot, all the different travels they've had since they left Egypt, ending in Avot Moav. And then it says, again, Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Nun, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe where? B'Avot Moav v'Yidenu echol lemor. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amarte lehem. We have a law, which now it seems like this is a specific law because of where we are now. It's not a repeat of a previous law possibly, but rather it could be a specific commandment now. Now, was this commandment relevant a year beforehand? Or 2 years beforehand? Not they weren't there only, what else? They weren't allowed to. Why weren't they allowed to? There was a mitzvah to conquer the land back in before we sinned with the sin of the spies, right?
Different people.
But I point out, even though there's an eternal commandment to settle the land of Israel, we don't always have the opportunity to conquer it. Understand the difference between the two? But I'm trying to give a reason why I need a new commandment now, because there was a previous commandment, don't go up. It was forbidden for the first generation after the sin of the spies to conquer it. God says, I'm not going to be with you. What's God telling Moshe to tell the people? The prohibition is over, and now it's time to do it. I'll give you a quick example. Keep your finger here. Just flip the page. Look at the first chapter of Sefer Devarim, where Moshe is telling the story of what happened 40 years back. It's real simple. Perek Aleph Pasuk Vav. in Sefer Dvarim. Okay. What happened? In Sefer Dvarim, Perek Aleph Pasuk Vav. Hashem Elokeinu diber elenu b'chorev lemor, rav lechem shevet bahar hazeh, punu usu lechem uvav har mori, b'kol shechina b'arva bahar, etc. Pasuk Chet, rei natat lechem et haaretz. See the word natati? Keep that in mind. Bo ushru et haaretz asher nishba Hashem lavotechem, l'Avram Yitzchak Yaakov letet lehem l'zam acharem. What did God tell you at Har Sinai as you're about to leave 40 years ago? Bo ushru et haaretz. And if I want to skip to Pasuk Yotet, in Perek Aleph, okay, we traveled the whole desert all the way till we got there. We got to Har Mori, okay, we got to Kadesh Barnea, and we said Beri Rav, and then again Pasuk Chaf Aleph, Rei Natan Hashem Lechem Rachel Lefanech Et Haaretz Alei Resh Kasher Diber Hashem Elei Avotecha Lach Al Tira Avotecha. Go conquer. So what do we see? There was a commandment to conquer when? In the first year, after they built the Mishkan and after by Bin Aaron. That's when we left Har Sinai. There was a commandment Alei Resh. And now that commandment was stopped because of the sin of the spies. That was in Sefer Bamidbar. And now there's a new commandment. Now it's okay. That's okay. Now we have to do it again. What I'm trying to show you is that the mitzvah to conquer the land, it might be an eternal commandment, but it has a startness. It can be paused. That should be obvious now. Agreed? And I'm trying to give a reason why God has to command it again, because up until now there was a pause.
Well, it's 40 years later, so it's a totally new generation, so it's reiteration.
It could no. I'm saying because there was a prohibition to conquer the land in the meantime. God says, "Don't go in." And I need it's not just a reminder. Otherwise, I need to remember. Moshe can do that in Sefer Dvarim. Review all the mitzvot. This is what's called a matir in rabbinic terms. You know what a matir is? Yeah. When something was forbidden, now it's okay. Yeah. Question.
Was it going to make a difference if conquering the land was going to be a one-time thing forever? Because then it will apply to today and then we're going to
that's exactly my point. That's the Ma'anaf Kamina. Today, nowadays, is what? If this is a one-time command, which this is a one-time opportunity, I'll give you a really bad example. Young couple gets married, wealthy father-in-law. He says, "Here's $1 million, start a business. I don't want to see you again." He said, "Here's your chance to start a business. I don't want you knocking over 10 years from now after you wasted all your money. Here's your chance, but don't come back again." Is this a one-time startup fund? A lot of funding institutions, what do? Here's your seed money to get started, but I don't want to see you again. What's that mean? Because if I know I can go back again, remember, I might not do it seriously, and therefore, it's an opportunity. If you mess up, you're in big trouble. I read somewhere, I forgot where that was, that if God's angry with our behavior in the land, I think someone said it today in Shema and Shul, that if we don't keep the mitzvot, God will get very angry, and He might kick us out of the land. You remember saying something like that? Now, when God kicks, I think there's a tochacha like that in Vayikra and Dvarim. Now, when He kicks you out of the land, so who kicks us out?
The land will kick you out.
No, the land will kick you out, but God will do something. He might send Nebuchadnezzar, He might send Ashur, He might send Sancheriv. Just read your Nevi'im. God might send an enemy to punish us because we're doing a bad job here. And the question is going to be, who brings us back? Boy, now we're talking modern day Zionism, right? Because I think the same Bible that says God's going to kick you out also says that what? God will bring you back. The question is, how does God bring you back? Now, there's a beautiful analogy to our relationship with God called Shiur-Is. You've heard that book?
Yeah.
You've heard of that, right? Now, the rabbis, the Edig Gemara, which you might be familiar with, which people love to quote, give a beautiful analogy. Why is it forbidden when we're in exile to return to the land? Remember, there's 3 Shavuot. Everyone knows that Kabbalah, right? There are 3 Shavuot. Don't go against, etc. Where's the psukim from, the 3 Shavuot? From Shiur-Is. Why are they from Shiur-Is? Because in a love relationship, sometimes we're not interested. Doesn't mean we won't be interested again, but now's not the time to start up. But you also have to know how to catch a signal when it is time to start up. So that's the question, how does God wink? You follow? And that's the big machloket among the rabbis. Everyone agrees, I think there's no doubt that God wants us to be living in the land of Israel. I think that's beyond a shadow of a doubt when you read Chumash. There's no doubt when God's angry, He might throw us out because the land belongs to God. But it's our responsibility to act there properly, but it's always God's land. And there's no doubt God can throw us out when we're bad. There's no doubt God can bring us back. The question is, how do we know, once we're thrown out, how do we know it's time to come back?
If get to the 67 more.
I'm just giving. I'm just giving a background. I don't want to get into halacha l'maisa. I'm trying to claim the whole argument there is that a super duper wink. Is that like, is that putting on perfume already? Got it? No, is that? I don't get my analogy. It's how many winks does God have to give to Uriah? Hey, God wants you back. Okay, I would have started with the Balfour Declaration, but I could have started even before then. Now on the other, you could say, it's just you're reading into it. Just remember from way back. When there used to be 4 clovers. Someone remember?
Yeah.
She loves me not. I don't want to bring. I just want to explain to you why the rabbis use psukim from Shiur-Is to explain why it's not time to go. Remember the 3 Shavuot? But that analogy is also the source of when it is time to come back. Which when the rabbis who say it is time to come back, all give the same idea that the 3 Shavuot are over because now what God wants is, now it's time for the relationship again. Again, I'm not trying to paskin who's right, who's wrong. I want you to understand the reason for the machloket. That's all. Got it? I'm not coming as a Zionist teacher. I'm coming as a teacher of Chumash to appreciate machloket parshanim. Why Ramban says one approach and no one seems to agree. Okay, now let's look at what other mitzvot we have that follow. Look at Perek Lamed Daled. What do we have here? Okay. When you come to the land of Canaan, which I'm giving you, this is the land that you get for your nachala, and the next 15 psukim is a detailed description of the border of Israel. How to do that? That's a class in archaeology or in geography. That's a lot of fun. I could do that, but you need a board, you need a map, and you need, as I said to you actually, it was where the borders, but basically, it's our eastern border is going to be the Jordan River. Our western border is going to be the Mediterranean Sea. That's a big machloket between us and our neighbors. Is the Mediterranean our eastern border or western border? Right? Everyone agrees it's our border. Okay. Our southern border is somewhere from the bottom of the Dead Sea to Wadi El Arish, till what's called Nachal Mitzrayim, to below Gaza a little bit, to Rafiach area. And our northern border, most likely it's the Litani, but that's depends what Hora is, and somewhere Sidon for sure is like at the edge of Eretz Canaan. That's already in Parshat Noach. And then how do you get from Sidon to Metula, basically, or to Ayun or Mach Ayun, etc. If you've been in Lebanon, so that's pretty much that area there. But what we call in the Bible from Dan to Beersheba, got it? From Dan to Beersheba, that's Eretz Canaan. We'll get to the borders of Eretz Canaan very soon. Now, so here we have a detailed border for that generation. Okay, hold on. Okay, now, then look in Pasuk Tetzayin. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, Elu Shmot Hanashim Asher Yinchalu Lechem Et Haaretz, and we get a list of names of the people who are in charge of giving out the land. Now, is that in Mitzvah Dorot or the Sha'ah? That's the Mitzvah for that generation of Mitzvot. Then we have in Perek Lamed Hey, the first 8 Psukim. These are the cities of the Levites. Got it? For the Migrashim. How many cities to give and where to put them, etc. Every tribe has to give cities for the Levites. Okay? What's the commandment? When every tribe gets their nachala, what happens? They have to give cities to the Levites because there are educators and teachers and we have to support them, etc., but they don't get their own nachala. That's why they don't need to do the army. Now, I gotta quit that. Now, then in Pasuk Tet, now that we mentioned the cities of the Levites, what do we have? Okay. The need to set aside what? Cities of refuge. Now that we mentioned cities of refuge, what do we add in? Mitzvah of what's called Rotzech B'Shogeg. Now that for sure is a Mitzvah L'Dorot. There's no doubt about that. Now, is that because this whole section is Mitzvah L'Dorot, or is that just a sort of a subsection, a tangent, or a footnote kind of idea? Because I've already had the laws of Arei Mikvat, or Moshe will tell them in Sefer Devarim again, but those were given back in Har Sinai. Remember? In Mishpatim, Makish B'Beit Mot Yumat, V'Asher Lo Tzada V'Helim Inal Liado V'Samtchan Makom. The principle of Arei Mikvat was given already, and if we know from Devarim, the laws were already given in Har Sinai about Arei Mikvat. But the detailed laws of Rotzech B'Shgaga, that's inserted here. But that's happened over and over again in Sefer Bamidbar, where I take laws that were given earlier and insert them in the middle of the narrative because of their connection. Now, the last topic is going to be the end of the Berot Tzavchat story. Remember, we have to balance it out because the most difficult moment in Moshe's, I shouldn't say that. When God told Moshe Rabbeinu, the women were right, remember? Back in Parshat Pinchas, God told Moshe Rabbeinu, came Berot Tzavchat Dovrot, they're right. And then remember what the next story was? It's time to die? Okay. That was Perek Chav Zayin. That was a shiur for Parshat Pinchas. But now, before his death, Moshe gets, you know what? Not so bad. The men are also right. Remember what they say? Cain, what's he say? Cain b'nei Mishpat b'nei Yosef. And God tells him, what's God tell him? The men are also right, right? Vasav Moshe b'nei Yisrael more. Cain mateh b'nei Yosef dovrim. Okay. So we're balanced out. Now, is that the fact that if a woman gets nachala, she has to marry within the tribe? Is that a one-time mitzvah for that generation? That's how the rabbis hold. Because what's the fear? That when Yovel comes, it'll go back to the original owner. Well, the original partialization, the land was given after Yeshua conquers the land, so it's only a problem for the first generation. Because the nachal go back to the very original nachala from the beginning, so that's why most Parshim hold that this was it's not an eternal law that you have to marry within the tribe. Maybe Ashkenazi Sephardi, but that's something else. But within the tribes here, it was only a one-time mitzvah for that generation because of B'not Tzadchad, but that was only for the first nachala, again. But most people hold that's a mitzvah, the Sha'ah. What I'm getting at is that all these mitzvot seem to be unique for that generation, but not necessarily for all generations. That's all. Cool. And the fact that some of these mitzvot in this section are clearly only for that generation, some of them, like the laws of Ari Miklat, are for all generations, but I can understand the specific cities might be for that generation. But because the laws that are here are unique to this section, there's room to argue whether are they forever or just a one-time thing. Got that?
Would Yovel apply as well?
Yovel is going to apply. No, the laws of Yovel are going to apply forever.
So why not these?
What?
So why not these?
No, but I'm saying the laws of Yovel, which ones? No. The laws of Yovel apply. The laws.
Keep it within the tribe.
No. Within what happens at Yovel? People go back to the original Nachala, from not from 50 years ago, but from the time of Yeshua. And that we go back every 50 years to the time of Yeshua. So the only problem is the first generation that you give it out in the time of Yeshua. But if you marry out of the tribe won't lose their Nachala because it'll go back to the original owner from Menashe, from way back. Wait, that's a whole discussion there. All I wanted to show, let me just summarize my first point. My first point is, because this section has a header and a closer, and they're given an Arbot Moav, and some of them for sure are unique to that generation, there's room to understand these mitzvot is just for that generation as opposed to for all generations. Okay. Now, there's one other topic which came up beforehand, Chumash, which is important. There's a bigger question. I hope I don't get in trouble for this. What gives us the right to conquer the land the first time? Well, you could say because it's our land. But what is Chumash called the land ever since Sefer Bereshit? It's called Eretz Canaan. Remember the first Rashi in Chumash? God gave it to them, took it away from them. Why? Because of their bad behavior. Gave it to us to do better. But why do we need to know that? Why do we need Sefer Bereshit? To know the land belongs to God. And God gives it to who's ever worthy. And we need to know that the land is our responsibility. But if we misbehave on the land, we might get the same fate as they have. What's the source of that? Go back to Sefer Vayikra, then we'll get to the source inside. Go back to Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, Perek Yudchet. This is, we read Yom Kippur at Mincha, in case you forgot. Remember, in chapter 18 in Sefer Vayikra, God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, it's the second half of Vayikra, where we start the Chukim u'Mishpatim. Remember? And the opening line in the beginning, remember? Tell Moshe, chapter 18 in Vayikra. God tells Moshe, tell Bnei Yisrael, Ani Hashem Elokechem. That's the first statement of the Ten Commandments. Remember, all these laws reflect the Ten Commandments. And then he says, a big cloud, don't act like the Egyptians did, don't take their culture. Don't act like the Canaanites. Instead, don't follow their customs. Keep my laws and my ways. Follow my culture. Keep my chukim mishpatim, and then you'll stay alive. We give examples of things that they did, mostly incest, what's called the arayot. Followed by in Pasach Daled, al titamu b'cho ele. Remember the word tumah here. Don't defile yourself with this type of behavior. Ki b'cho ele nitmu agon meshoni meshalech miptechem. That was this type of behavior is what the Canaanites did. That's why I'm sending them out. But titma haaretz, they defiled the land, and I'm punished them for their sin, and the land's kicking them out. You better keep these laws, Pasuk Chavav, okay? And don't do these toivot. You and anyone living in your land with you, because that's the reason why God kicked them out, and that's what made the land tameh. See that? And then Pasuk Chavchet, v'lo teki atzetchem b'tamechem ota kasher katago asher lifnechem. Don't cause the land to kick you out like you kicked them out, because anyone who does these to'evot, they'll be cut off, and therefore you better keep these mitzvot if you want to stay in the land. And if that wasn't clear enough in Perek Yudchet, God has to repeat it in Perek Chaf, at the end of Perek Chaf, Pasuk Chaf Hey probably. I'm sorry, not Chaf Hey. Pasuk Chaf Gimel in Perek Chaf. Okay, Perek Chaf in Vayikra Pasuk Chaf Gimel. Lo techu b'chut hagoi asher ani mishalech mitnechem ki et ko'el asu v'akutz bam v'amar lechem atem tishu et admatam. See the word Yerusha. You conquer their land or inherit their land. V'ani etnena lechem l'reshet otah eretz zavat chalav u'dvash. Ani Hashem echechem eshiv etchem min hatameh. In other words, I'm kicking them up for the bad behavior. I'm giving you a chance to take it. But again, if you act like they do, you'll what do you call it? You're out. Now, that point is being emphasized not only here, also in the Tochacha at the end of Vayikra, and also in the Tochacha and Devarim. And therefore, what's going to happen? And that's why the question comes up. There's no doubt the first generation has a commandment to conquer the land. They had to stop after send of the spies, but there's a new start again. The question is going to be, is that a one-time commandment because now the people living there have sinned and God's throwing them out for their bad behavior? Remember, Brit Ben Tarim is already alluded to. Ki lo shalem avon amri hadena. I can't give it to you right away because I can't give you the land until they deserve to be thrown out. That's a comment made already, probably in Sefer Breshit already. But if Breshit's given in Har Sinai, it's given in hindsight, explaining why it's been so long, why it took so long to get the land. And the question is going to be, let's say we misbehave and God throws us out of the land and we go into exile and God brings us back. When we come back the next time, does the law of kicking out the 7 nations apply anymore? And simple pshat of Chumash is it doesn't. Now, how God brings you back, that's a different question. That's an interesting question. But the law of the 7 nations is clearly a one-time commandment for those nations. Yeah.
Did Hashem design this so that the Canaanites would sin, so that they would be enabled?
That seems to be a pasuk in Sefer Yoshua at the end. Why only the Givonim gave in? So there's a pasuk like that in the end of Yoshua that says, God made it that no one else wanted to make peace with us. But look at the Rambam in Hilchot Melachim at the end. He says anyone who wanted to make peace could have made peace, but luckily they didn't.
And then what would have happened to our?
What would have happened? That's between you. That's always.
No. So it seems that this is by divine design that this happened.
Yeah, but Ben, there's a whole. That's a class of machshava. What would have happened if man didn't sin in Gan Eden? What would have happened if Lavan didn't treat? If Lavan didn't trick Yaakov, we'd only have 2 tribes. Bottom line, we have what we have. How it came about, who's to blame? Ask about that Chakira. Now,
which one?
Yeah, the same problem. You have people. That's going to be the big question when we finally conquer the land. When we come back again, what situation are we in? Now, L'mayin nafkamina, it's a massive nafkamina. Follow? When we come back to our land, do we take whatever we get sort of legally? It's who gives us right for land? Do we need universal recognition? You understand all the problems? I'm not going to paskin now. It's not my job to paskin. But you understand why there's so many arguments, right? Do we have an obligation to kick out non-Jews living here? Do we have a permission, or is it forbidden unless they try to kill us? You understand? And why is it they try to kill us? Because God wants us to take land, but if He didn't try to kill us, we wouldn't be able to. You follow? You can play that game forever. Again, my goal is not to paskin. You follow? I'm not qualified for that. I don't think anybody is. But I want to explain to you why there's an argument. That's my whole goal. Okay, now, what we're going to do now go to the source sheet. Okay? The famous Ramban, I want to start with first. Okay, I made it nice big letters. Said that little Ramban in the Chumash, right? Big letters, nice to follow. I want to share with you how the Ramban reads and how he explains it. Now remember, how do we know there's 613 mitzvot? Anyone know why?
The Gemara in Makos.
Yeah. And what pasuk is it built on? Yes. Torah Tzivah Moshe. Do the math without a calculator. Torah is 611, and we got 2 directly from God, and that's how we get 613. Then it's a zero-sum game. You understand? Anyone who counted the mitzvot begins with what assumption? I got to get to 613. Now I say go fish. If you, that's not nice. But now what every parshan does, it's a zero-sum game. I got to get to 613, but I got to cut and paste. And the Rambam spends more time explaining what his principles are for what's counted and what's not counted. If you ever read Sefer Mitzvot, the Rambam, he has, I think, 30 principles, 14 or something like that. He likes that number. He has all these principles based on what do I decide what's a mitzvah or not. But there's no doubt he's using those to get to 613. You understand? Now, Rambam did that. Sasmag did it. Sefer Mitzvot Gadol. People did it. Ramban did not do that. Ramban didn't start from scratch. What did he do? Ramban, in case to catch on, there's Rashi is there. Rashi comes with Chumash. What makes Ramban famous? Because Rashi's famous, Ramban has where to start. And therefore, how do all the famous Rambans begin? Pirush HaKuntrus, and then everyone knows Rashi. Hey, Rashi's wrong. Wow, I got an audience. Because we thought Rashi was right. But Ramban begins with existing commentary, and then he gives his comment on it, that's what Rashi is ecstatic that Ramban, Rashi would not be angry that Ramban argued with him. That's what the Beit Midrash is about. We love to argue in search of understanding Torah. Now, so therefore Rambam, Maimonides, counted the 613. What did Ramban do? Ramban what's called hasagot. So there's certain mitzvot asay that Rambam thought they were mitzvot asay. Ramban says no. For every one Ramban takes out, what's he have to do? Put another one in. Now the question, what comes first? When Ramban says, oh, this has to be a mitzvah, now I got to find someone to kick out of class. You understand? I have a limited amount of players on the team. When I want to bring in a new player, I got to kick out another player. Okay? Speaking of, if you're in the sports mode nowadays, like half the country. Now, so therefore, one of the mitzvot that Ramban is adamant to keep, in case you didn't read the Ramban, he's big on the land of Israel. He's our favorite parshan. So he says like this. He takes the pasuk from Harashtem et Haaretz, that we quote in the beginning in Bamidbar Lamed Gimel. Ve'al dati, got it? Zo mitzvot aseh, got it? As opposed to Rambam holds it's not. No. Yitzav otam sheishvu ba'aretz v'yushu otam. Notice he says that we live in the land and we inherit it. Now, someone mentioned this idea of Yerusha. Is Yerusha specifically conquering the land militarily, or is that holding on to the land? You understand? Now, I can have a mitzvah once we have the land, not just to settle it, but to stay on it and to develop it. You understand? Now, Yerusha, does it mean Yerusha, like in Yiddish? Yerusha is something passive, right? Yerusha and Sefer Yeshua and Chumash is very active. But the question is, once I have the land, is there a positive commandment to continue to develop the land? If there's a one-story building, to build a 10-story building. Or let's say there's an old house in Baka, right? They make it a 10-story house, okay? Called Tama 38 and things like that. Is that, when you do that, is that a kiyum b'harashtem et haaretz? Or is that just, real estate?
What is the difference between the Yorashtem and the Horashtem?
What? Horashtem is more, what? It's more positive, yeah, but it means like something that needs to be, that's what, it's not just a prediction, it's something you need to do. Yeah, basically, Yerusha requires, I'll give you the best example. Torah Tzivalenu Moshe, we just read that, Morasha Kilat Yaakov. There's a beautiful Maharam, it says, what's in Morasha? Because Torah doesn't come passively, you have to conquer it. Understand? Like, Yerusha means Lohorish.
Uses that here
What?
in some other places.
Listen, if I had time, actually, it all goes back to Brit Ben Avtarim. In fact, we'll go back to the original promise of the land when the word Yerusha. But Yerusha is an active, is something active as opposed to passive. The question is an active act of developing the land once you have it, or conquering the land. That's the question.
How does that explanation explain the use of the term Morashada?
What?
How does the explanation
You have the same line in, remember the 4 cups, the 5 cups? V'otzeiti v'tzati v'galti, v'lechem v'lechem v'datem, ki ani Hashem b'tzem, v'beiti etchem el haaretz, asher nasati et yadi letet ota lavrin tzakol, v'natati lechem ota morasha adi Hashem. Now, that'll be, morasha is like a status, something you've accomplished, you've taken already. It's that once you've conquered it, it'll be a morasha, or called moreshet. Now, there's a department in the government called moreshet. Okay, now, back to, okay, so again, V'adati zeh mitzvah taseh, yitzev otam sheishvu ba v'yushu otam. I'm going to get back to the word Yerusha soon. Ki hu nitna lahem b'lo yim'asu b'nachlat Hashem. See what we're saying? It's not so much the need to conquer, the idea is not to give up on it. The idea is to, like, actively want to live in the land and develop it. I want to take it out of its military setup as opposed to its ezrachi. Citizen, what's the word for ezrachi? Civilian. It's civilian aspect. The idea of not just holding on land, but developing land and living there. Okay. ואילו יעלה על דתם ללכת ולכבוש ארץ שנער או ארץ אשור וזולתם להתיישב בהם, יעברו מצוות עשה. If the people decide, instead of taking Eretz Canaan, let's set up our nation in Bergen County or short of Uganda, whatever it is, that would be a bittul aseh. Now, what happened? What's he referring to? That's Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain, isn't it? That was their idea. Now, ומה שהפליגו רבותינו במצוות הישיבה בארץ, שיעשה לצאת ממנה, ידונו כמורד את האישה. Remember, then he quotes the famous Gemara that talks about, or Mishnah, that if a husband, let's say there's a marital argument, unheard of, where one spouse wants to go to Israel, the other doesn't want to, right? If she wants to make Aliyah and he doesn't, she gets uksuva, and hopefully and she'll find somebody better. What?
Just had it in the document.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So he said how important it is. I like that. He quoted what we just did. I didn't realize that. Okay. See what he just quoted? That shows we're thinking alike. Okay. And he brings a proof from the first generation, but I brought that as a proof that it's a mitzvah that can be turned on and turned off because of our behavior. Now that says, of course, he likes to argue with Rashi. What did Rashi say? Rashi says it's good advice. Says Rashi, okay? He says Rashi understood it as good advice. He's saying when you come in, get rid of the enemies, get rid of the idol worship, get rid of them, because if you don't, they'll get rid of you. He says it's not being written as a specific commandment that would have been given in Har Sinai, but rather it's a good advice for that generation. Get the job done and finish the job off, and don't wait till later. But he says no. He says what I explained was Ikar. Okay. Now, then in his Hasagot on the Ramban, this is his Pirush on Chumash. Similar to that in his commentary on the Rambam's Sefer Mitzvot, he said on the fourth mitzvah he says that he's adding Shistavu l'reshet ha'aretz asher natan Hashem yitbarach v'yitar l'avotenu v'l'Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov lo nezra b'yad zulatenu min amot ad l'shmama. Okay, basically to keep it and not to abandon. The idea is saying not to abandon the land. The idea is when you have it. What I'm trying to point out is that the Ramban is focusing a lot on not so much its actual conquest, but once you have it, to take care of it and not to abandon it, not to give up on it, okay, and not to leave it to other people. Etc. He says God gave us details exactly what its borders are, etc. And he quotes again the pasuk from Devarim. Not to leave over any empty place on it. Now, does that mean in future generations, if other people are living there, to throw them out? Or that's that would be a wide step, but I can understand where people would reach that conclusion. Okay? Again, he quotes from Sefer Dvarim, the pasuk we just quoted. It was a commandment back then. Okay, it brings all the psukim we have from Sefer Dvarim. What's his proof? The same proof I brought that it's a mitzvah I can turn on and turn off. He brings as a mitzvah that he seems to be claiming that the reason why they're punished is because they didn't fulfill the mitzvah. The problem with that is the story of the Mapilim. Because what's the Mapilim say? Hey, we want to conquer it. But God says, no, now it's not time. So that's why I think this proof is not as strong. I brought the proof of Mapilim to show for sure there's a value in it, and a one-time value for sure, but it's a mitzvah that can have a time in and time out. It can be an eternal mitzvah that isn't always applicable. I'll give you a really bad example. There's a mitzvah that say to get married, to purvu, but not when you're 8 years old or 10 years old or 50. No, it's only when you're old enough to get married. Okay, here. Now listen, then he says as follows. This is the one we love to quote. Where it says, Vatish Tabesh. He's referring to left-wingers like. We say, Vatish Tabesh for Tomar, ki ha-mitzvah azot hi ha-mitzvah b'mechem shivat amamim, shesabu lovdam, shembar v'achrim tachrimin. Don't think there's only a one-time mitzvah for the 7 nations. Ein adabar ken. If Ramban's saying that, what's he alluding to? That the other opinion that people say it's only a one-time. No, he's bringing up a Havamina that a lot of people say that it's only a one-time mitzvah for the first time for the 7 nations. He says, don't think that. Ena davar kain. Sha'anu nistavinu la'rog ha'omot behem v'lachmam imanu v'imotzu lashlim when there's a temple time yiduim. He says there's always a mitzvah to what do you call it? To take it, but they're allowed to make peace if they want to make peace. But if they make peace, only on our conditions, etc. Okay. Abba ha'aretz. What's it say next? Abba ha'aretz lo naniach otam biyadam v'lo biyad tzulotam minomot b'dor min hatorot. This is the Ramban that everyone in our modern, let's say, right-wing Zionist camp, that's their anchor. Not it? It's not just the first generation, first time around, but for all generations, it's our responsibility to make sure that we hold on to the land and don't let anyone else live there. If someone wants to live there, wants to live a peace under our conditions, that's fine. But otherwise, we have to get rid of them. I'm just trying to explain to you why this is such a classic Ramban that everyone loves to quote in our so-called religious Zionist camp. Now, Megillat Esther, the famous other opinion. Megillat Esther is a commentary in the Rambam also. I mean, Maimonides. Hu lefisha mitzvot Yerushat haaretz lo nahaga elo rak b'mei Moshe v'Yoshua v'David. He wants to understand why didn't Rambam count it? Why didn't the Rambam count this mitzvah? He says because it's only mitzvah for that one-time generation. All I try to show you is when you study Chumash thematically or seriously, when you analyze Chumash, there's room for both opinions. That's what I tried to show you, and therefore Megillat Esther makes sense now as well. Okay? He's trying to explain why the Rambam didn't count it. That was the first time around, the first round. That was the father-in-law analogy I gave you. But once we're kicked out, that's the three shvot we talked about before. That's only when we're not under foreign rule, etc. If you want to get your ksuva the easy way in an argument in Tinek, whether that applies nowadays without a Beit HaMikdash. Now, what's considered Mashiach? I mean, that's a bigger problem. Even we get this, once Mashiach comes in, it might apply again. Are we in a Tkufa Mashiachit or not? That's already beyond the scope of what we're doing. Yeah, question.
Well, the question is, what is his source?
Can we get this there?
He also says that it's also very, at some point he said it's very dangerous now to go to Israel for the next argument.
Listen, just pass this back.
But my question is, what is his source that Noheged L'Dorot Ad Bo HaMashiach? Where's the source for that?
Probably in Parshat Nitzavim. That God's going to bring us back. When it comes back, it'll be like the first time around.
Does it say specifically the B'acharit Yamim or Yimot HaMashiach? He says it's going to bring us back. Could happen anytime.
Okay, yeah, but I'm saying I agree with you. But
my point is, I don't find that there's any source for that, and that he quotes any specific source anywhere.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says V'nirali. That's what he says. You're in the beginning, Nirali. That's the source. His source is V'nirali. That's a good source. I mean, I'm saying V'nirali means when I study all Chumash and analyze it and look at its bigger picture, etc. This seems my conclusion, but I have a question which is unclear. That I try to explain to you why it's not crystal clear that it should be Mitzvah L'Dorot. I'm not saying for sure it is, for sure it's not. I'm saying the way the Mitzvah is presented in Chumash, together with the laws in Vayikra, where it's located in Sefer Bamidbar, the Tochachot, etc. We say in Shema. Right? There's room to understand there's a difference between the first wave of conquest as opposed to a future return. What's our situation today? Way out the scope of what I can do today. You follow? My goal is simply to appreciate why there's an argument and the logic of both sides. It's not that one side knows how to read Chumash, the other side doesn't know how to read Chumash. One understands Chumash. It's a logical argument, and a serious study of Chumash enables you to appreciate both approaches. That's all. And therefore, don't be surprised when someone says Nirali. Again, the Rambam doesn't say why he didn't count it. The Rambam doesn't quote his sources. So what do you call it? Why didn't? That's a great topic. Why the Rambam doesn't quote his sources. But it gives a lot of parnasa for a lot of people. You know the famous thing they were doing in the Cairo Genisa, they found a book called, the Rambam wrote all the sources in a book. and they burned it because it would be a disaster. It would be worse than that would be like a disaster for all.
Who wrote the book that said that these were all the sources?
What?
Who wrote the book that said
Some forger probably wrote it. They would have said it was a forgery anyhow, because it would ruin so many. There's so many books about what's the Rambam sources. Right, now I want to go back. I want to show you where this is coming from in the Rambam. Look what the Rambam says. I want to show you from a totally different angle. The Rambam. How much time do we have? 10 minutes. The borders of Israel are a little complicated because ask anybody where are the borders of Israel. So we know from Dan to Beersheba. Remember from river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea.
Say it that way.
Okay, that's the borders in Parshat Maseh. It says it explicitly, right? It's also back in Sefer Breshit already. When in Perek Yud, when we have the Gvul, the Kanani, it's from Sidon down to Gaza, and from Sidon to the north down to the Sodom and Amorah, to the bottom of the Dead Sea. In Maseh, we start from the bottom of the Dead Sea, go a full circle to the Kinneret, to the north down to the Kinneret again. Down to Beersheba, basically, it's inhabitable. South of Beersheba, or south of the Negev, south of Malay Kabrim, it's not inhabitable. There's not enough water there unless you bring it artificially. Every ordained, there's no doubt, there's not Jordan River is a natural border. Okay, now, when did God promise the land? God promised land twice in Sefer Bereshit, in case you forgot. Once in Brit Ben Abtarim, once in Brit Milah. Remember, Brit Ben Abtarim is in God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And here, so look on the page, the second page I gave you on the back page. Remember all the good stuff's on the back page? Yeah. I made it a nice big shukim here. Remember in Brit Ben Abtarim, listen what God says. Vayomer Hashem, Vayomer Elav, Ani Hashem Ashoticha Miur Chasdim, just like the Ten Commandments. Letet Tachat Azot L'Rishta. Remember, Avram has no children yet. Remember, it's Avram's only just made Aliyah, chapter 15. No children, not Yishmael or Yitzchak yet. Anything? He has nothing. And that's why he says, "What do you want? What can you give me?" I have no children. He says, "Don't worry, you'll have children like the stars in the sky." But one day those children get this land, the Rishta. And Avram asked Hashem, how or when would this happen? By the Ki Yerashena? See the word Yerusha? That's a question. And God says there's a little ceremony. And God says, what do you need to know? You'll get the land, but only after hundreds of years of suffering and slavery, etc. And then you'll get it. And then on that day, because it'll be a long historical process, God makes a covenant with Avram Avinu, Pasuk Yudchet. Yamu karat Hashem et Avram brit lemor lezachar natat ha'aretz hazot min nidhar mitzrayim ad nahar prat ad nahar gadol nahar prat. And then we listed the 10 nations. Now, what? Yeah.
It's already
It's given them. I've set aside this land. Now, nahar mitzrayim nahar prat. That's from river to river. Got it? Now, never has the Nile River. This is from Nile River to the Euphrates. That's clear, isn't it? Never has the Nile with the Euphrates ever been a border of any country. Every major country, if you learned your world history, the Nile River is the center of Egyptian civilization. The Thames River, the center of England. The Seine River, the Rhineland, the Rhine River, isn't it? It's called the Rhineland. Every major civilization has a major river at the center of it for good logical reasons. Remember in world history, the Fertile Crescent. What I'll show you from the Rambam in a minute, what God's telling Avraham Avinu, the land I'm giving you, which will be later Eretz Canaan, which we have, from Dan to Beersheba, etc., is located in between those two centers. In other words, our goal is not to conquer all the way up to the Euphrates and all the way up to the Nile River. That's not supposed to be our border. The assumption is there's always going to be a country in Mesopotamia, always be a country in Egypt. That's the way it was. You learn that in world history. Because of those were the centers of ancient civilization. We were chosen to bring a blessing to other nations. Remember, location. To get our job done, God gives us a land located where? Smack in between, on the trade route, on the main land route that connects Mesopotamia to Egypt, which is Eretz Canaan, which is the background to all of our history and all of our trouble. If we're doing a good job, we can have a tremendous effect on all those nations, on those centers of civilization, because people travel through our land and they see us, we have visibility, etc. We can trade with them, we trade ideas, and they can say, Rak am chacham v'navon hagoy gadol hazeh, remember Parshat Bet Hanan? Or, if we're doing a bad job, God has a tool at his fingers to give us trouble, which is most of Jewish history. Remember, we have Ashur, Bavel, Egypt. God has a whip, just like he has our climate. The climate in Israel is very tricky. If we do a bad job, God can stop the rain like that, and we're in trouble. God has easy tools to give it to keep us in check. So he has climate control, which is really strict, and we have political control, being war control, that everyone wants our land because of its strategic location. On the other hand, when we're doing a good job, we can do, there's great potential in the land of Israel. And therefore, Minhag Mitzvah Minhag Pride is very thematic. They're not borders, but they're thematic. As opposed to the borders of Eretz Canaan, which are very precise. Now, in Brit Milah, when God promises the land, see in Pasuk Chet, I'll be your God, you'll be my people, but I'm setting aside the land of Eretz Canaan, Eretz Mugorecha, where you've been moving, where you've been living. The borders of Eretz Canaan are very specific in Israel. Now, question is, so what are our borders? So I'll show you the Rambam in a minute. It goes like this. First, we have to conquer Eretz Canaan, which was this week's parsha as well. Remember Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven? That's why I picked the topic for now. First, we have to conquer Eretz Canaan. Once we take Eretz Canaan, what can we do? We can expand, okay? We can open up a couple buttons. So we can expand. What we do? We expand to the south. We can take over the Negev. We can go into Lebanon a little bit. We can go to Transjordan. Our goal is not to take over Mesopotamia and Egypt. They're always going to be there. The goal is we can expand between Mesopotamia and Egypt. We can expand a little bit. That's the idea. And the question is, but the idea is first you have to take the land of Israel, and afterwards you can expand. But you can't start on the outside. The Kedusha of outside is only once you take the first side. And that's why, that's the time, Bnei Reuven, is that come with us and take Eretz Canaan. Once we take Eretz Canaan, then it becomes official. That's why in Sefer Yoshua, after we take Eretz Canaan, what are God and Reuven worried about? What are people going to say? All the rejects of Breshit are in Ever Yarden, right? Edom, Moab, Ammon. Remember? God and Reuven, hey. And what do they say? We're not co-religionists. And what did? They built a mizbech to show we're the same religion. Remember that? And it was misunderstood, and luckily there was a rabbi there who brought peace instead of trouble. Good old Pinchas saved the day. Now, keep that in mind, and now we're going to read something amazing. The Rambam, right, has a book called Zra'im. One of his 14 books is called Zra'im, which are laws that have to do with produce of land of Israel. Correct? You know you have to give Trumot to Masrot? So, our Trumot to Masrot only apply in the land of Israel. So if I'm going to have a law book about Trumot to Masrot, the first thing I need to define is, what defines the land of Israel? Does that make sense? And therefore, because the Rambam has a book about Mitzvot HaTlud Ba'aretz, one of the first things he has to do is explain what are the borders of Israel. What would I expect him to write? If you learn the second Gittin, he'd say, from Merkem to Mizrach, Merkem to Ashkelon, etc. But that's a different topic. Now, listen to the Rambam's definition of land of Israel. It's mind-boggling. I want you to appreciate where it comes from. Everyone have it? Hatrumot v'masrot enan nogot min haTorah ela be'Eretz Yisrael ben bifnei bayit ben shlot bayit. By the way, the word Eretz Yisrael is never mentioned in Chumash at all. It's either Eretz Canaan or Haaretz. In Tanakh, in Sefer, I think Shmuel, Eretz Yisrael is where, as opposed to Eretz Plishtim. As David's by Achish Melakat and saying, you kicked me out of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Eretz Yisrael is the land where Israel is living in. Not Eretz Yisrael, but it's the land where the Jewish people are living, not Eretz Canaan. Eretz Canaan is a geographic border. Eretz Yisrael where the Jews are living. All through Tanakh. Now listen. He says, Trumot to Masrot are only in the Dioraita, only where? In Eretz Yisrael, whether there's a temple or not. Now, what's Eretz Yisrael mean? Eretz Yisrael Mora B'chol Makom, meaning B'chol Makom, not in Chumash, but B'chol Makom in this composition of the Rambam. Yes? Listen carefully. He had sot shekovesh otam melech Yisrael, o shofet o nevi midat rov Yisrael. V'zeh nikra kibush rabim. You catch on to the Rambam what he just did? What defines the land of Israel? Sovereignty. You have that? He says the definition, halachic definition of the land of Israel is Jewish sovereignty. It's a mind-boggling, isn't it? I'm expecting to hear geographic borders. He says, what's Eretz Yisrael Dioraita? I need Jewish sovereignty. You see how important Jewish sovereignty is? That's the word Yerusha. Now, what's the logic behind it? I'm sorry, Abu Yachid, listen. Misrael, O Mishpacha O Shevet. Let's say a specific tribe, or let's say the Rothschild family. He says, I'm going to buy up all the real estate in Israel. But he's buying it, let's say, from the Turks or from the British or something. That doesn't have the deen. That's not going to make it Kedushat Haaretz. Okay? It's got nothing to do with ownership. It has to do with sovereignty. And therefore, it has to be sovereignty not of a specific family or person, but rather of the Jewish people. The question, what defines the Jewish people? What's he say here? Melech Yisrael. Right? Or shofet or navi midat rov Yisrael. He's referring to Sefer Shoftim. הוא נקרא כיבוש רבים. אבל יחיד משפחה או שבט שלחו וכבשו לעצמם מקום, אפילו מארץ שניתנה לאברהם, which is, we see Eretz Canaan in a minute, אינו נקרא ארץ ישראל, כדי שנהגו בכל המצוות. Now, it might be Eretz Yisrael, but it's not Eretz Yisrael. Got it? It says it might be the land, but it's not. It doesn't have the halachic status of the land of Israel. What's the logic? Who do people pay taxes to?
Government.
Yeah. And what gives government the right to collect taxes?
They're in charge.
They're sovereign. What enables the government to collect taxes and to take taxes is their sovereignty. What gives them sovereignty?
People.
No. Conquest, right? Now, in order to conquer them, what do you need? You need an army. Who pays the army? The government. That's the basic of social studies. What I'm getting at is you pay taxes to the sovereign power. Now, when we conquer the land, who might we think is sovereign? We are. What do we do symbolically to show that God's sovereign? Right? We give a token tax to who? To our sovereign reign. That's truma. Got it? How much truma? You're right. How much truma do you have to give? Mashu. No, mashu. Truma is mashu. Now the rabbis say 1/50th. They widen mashu a little bit. But you understand the symbolism of giving truma? Truma is an act of showing, even though we're sovereign, God's sovereign. When does that apply? When we're sovereign. If we're not sovereign, what's the point? Yeah. So that's why I'm trying to explain why the Rambam is so adamant on the word kibush as far as truma goes. No. ובני זה חילק יהושע ובית אינו את כל ארץ ישראל לשבטים, אף על פי שלא נכבשה כדי שלא תהיה כיבוש יחיד. It says, in Sefer Yeshua, when all the tribes, we don't finish the kibush, remember? He gathers everyone in Shiloh, he gives everyone a little petek. What do you call that thing you put in the kotel? A pitka. No, but in Yiddish. No, kapitel is in Tidim. A kvittel, that's it. Everyone gets a little kvittel, and that's your nachala. Says, why does he do that? Because every shevet is going to do it on their own, but he wants to do it from the koach of Rov Yisrael. Got it? That's what he's doing. Now, this is what he says next. Then how about the lands of David outside Eretz Canaan, like Aram Naraim, etc.? He says, even though David was a king, he took that before he took everything inside. Now, skip to David, because we're running out of time. We'll see in a minute. Listen carefully to this wording. Isn't it referring to Parshat Maseh now? Okay. Had Yeshua first conquered all of Eretz Canaan first, understand what he's saying? Yes. He's differentiating between Eretz Canaan and Haaretz. So, no, Eretz Canaan doesn't define Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is defined by sovereignty, but sovereignty has to begin with first Eretz Canaan, and then you can expand. He's all building this on Parshat Shavuot, isn't he? We're Kovesh Eber Yarden. Sichon and Og, we took it over. We have total sovereignty over Sichon and Og. But it doesn't have the status of Eretz Yisrael until when? Until after Yeshua is going to conquer Eretz Canaan. After we take Eretz Canaan, then we can expand out to Eber Yarden. That's why Moshe only sets aside the Arei Biklad on the other side, in Sefer Ben, but they're not official until after the Kibush. But you understand the chiluk between Eretz Canaan and Eretz Yisrael? Now, why is that important? There's the core, I call the kernel of the land of Israel, Eretz Canaan. That's the land that Avram was in. That's the land God promised Avram Avinu. That's the land located between the two centers of civilization. That land has potential. But it doesn't have the din of Eretz Yisrael as far as halacha is concerned, as far as Tumat Masrot, until we have sovereignty. Now, because we have sovereignty is important to be a nation representing God. You have to be sovereign. Sovereignty is dangerous because sovereignty might get to your head. And therefore, what do we need to do? We, on the one hand, need to be sovereign. Got that? Kibush is important to accomplish our goal as God's people. But kibush is also dangerous because it might lead to things that belongs to us. And therefore, what do we do symbolically? Everything that comes, which is the result of our sovereignty, we pay a tax to our sovereign. Now, when we're under foreign rule, we pay tax to, it could be the king of Pas. If you read, we don't have time to do it, but in the book of Ezra, actually book of Nehemiah, in chapter 9 and 10, when they make this Amanah, they give a whole speech. We come back and by Cheney, and Ezra makes a whole speech. He says like this, listen, we deserve what we got. Remember, the Siddur Kadin, we went to exile, it's all our fault, and now Baruch Hashem, you brought us back. And we take upon ourselves to keep all the mitzvot, In addition to all the mitzvot that we're keeping, we're also going to take upon ourselves extra mitzvot to give trumot masot and bikurim. What's going on? Extra. He says, well, what's what all the Parshim explain? He says, well, friend, we came back even though we're still under foreign rule and we're paying taxes to Persia. Despite that, we're going to pay taxes to you. That's what he says in the speech in Parak Yud in Nehemiah. Read it later on for homework. It's really, really neat. So also let me summarize. By the way, I'll just end real. I know I'm over time. It's on Keshmer the next year. Look in Chapav, the end of the thing. התרומה בזמן הזה, אפילו במקום שהחזיקו עולי בבל, ואפילו בימי עזרא, אינו מן התורה אלא מדבריהם, שאין לך תרומה לתורה אלא בארץ ישראל, בזמן שיהיו כל ישראל שם, שנאמר כי תבוא, ביד כולכם, שבירושה ראשונה כמו שהייתה לעתיד לבוא בירושה שלישית. לא כשבירושה שנייה שהייתה בימי עזרא, שהייתה ביד מקצתן, ולפיכך לא חייבה אותם התורה, כן נראה לי שבדין מסרות, etc. שהם חייבים בזמן הזה אלא מדבריהם. says, only when am I chayiv d'oraita? Only when we have kibush, only when we're sovereign, only when Rov of Israel is here. Now, what's the status of the Israeli government today? That's a great question. It's kibush dayan shmei kibush. If anyone understands what that means, is the state of Israel considered Melech Yisrael? That's a great question. What? I think it is, but I can understand the halachic debate. Now, fortunately, Rov Yisrael isn't living here. So there's a lot of people who would love to make aliyah, but they're staying in Chutz La'aretz because they don't want it to be d'oraita. And therefore, to save us from all these halacha complications, they're suffering staying in these terrible places in the 5 towns in Teaneck, etc. And they're just suffering there. So we should be chayav d'oraisa and trumot masrot. Unfortunately, too many are making aliyah nowadays, and it could be we have a problem coming up soon. Yeah, real quick question.
Yeah, so does the Rambam hold that trumas and maishus we are chayav in all of the lands that we have sovereignty, or only the land that was originally Eretz Canaan that we even all the expansion?
Even the expansion, yeah.
Trumas and maishus are
d'oraita even in the expanded lands, yeah. In the very land. It's not only because we didn't take Eretz Canaan first. But once we take Eretz Canaan to expand, yeah.
But it also applies to all these other lands.
That's what, because it becomes Eretz Yisrael. That's exactly his chiluk. But I'm saying the Rambam is being mecham between Eretz Yisrael and Eretz Canaan because of Brit Ben Abtarim. You understand how the borders? Eretz Canaan is geographic. Ever since Parshat Noach, agree? There's geographic borders of Eretz Canaan and Parshat Maseh. It's the land of Canaan, which is a geographic location. They first was given to the Canaanites. God took it away from them because of their bad behavior, gave it to us to get our job done, and then it's a big bump. Now again, when God says he'll take away from us, we know he sent someone to do that. How he brings it back to us, that's what a great debate. Now, how do we understand modern day events and how God talked to us through history? Again, that's for machshava teachers. And I'm coming as a Chumash teacher. My goal is to explain why there's logic to both sides of the argument and where the argument's stemming from. That was the goal of today's year. And we'll take a little break and we'll next time we arrange Miklat because unfortunately it's going to be necessary. So we were asking.
A lot of Jews we might have majority.
Yeah, we might have. Yeah.
Maybe logic, but there's no source for it.
Yeah.
Do you have a
We'll start like 5 minutes. We'll start at 10:35 instead of 10:30. Yeah.
I have a mamar about why the Torah refers to Eretz Yisrael as Eretz Canaan. Canaan is Ben Ham, which is Africa.
The Hambla, the Canaan.
So why is Canaan in Artzot Shem? And why does the Torah?
Don't you realize in Chumash we're smack in the middle between Ham, Shem, and Yafet?
Yeah.
Shem is the Orient.
So I thought you.
Yafet is Europe, and Egypt is Canaan.
Oh, because I thought when you came to Seattle 20, 30 years ago, and you talked about the 3 sons got the 3 continents, that you, maybe I heard wrong, that you wanted to say Eretz Canaan because Shem is all the